Chapter 20 The Secrets of the Past. The morning light broke softly over the Guardian's sanctum, illuminating the quiet clearing where Azural, Talvar, and Soraya stood, listening intently to the Guardian's parting words. They had been preparing for this next stage of their journey for hours, fortified by the Guardian's guidance and the knowledge they had gained from the trial of shadows. Their destination lay eastward, to the fabled forges of Eldara, where ancient magic might hold the final key to severing Malakar's hold entirely. Azural clutched a map handed to her by the lead Guardian, its surface marked with symbols and shifting lines, which seemed to pulse faintly in her hands. The Guardian's voice echoed as he spoke, his words heavy with warning. "This path leads not only to Eldara's fires, but to the very depths of your spirit. The journey will test your resolve as fiercely as any flame. Take heed, Draconis Ignis Aeterni. What you seek to conquer may yet conquer you." Azural met his gaze, her expression resolute. "I understand, and I am ready." The Guardian nodded, his gaze lingering on her, then shifted to Soraya, a faint glimmer of foreboding in his eyes. "Be cautious, Enchantress. Your heart holds a secret that may change your course. Trust your path, but remain vigilant." Soraya's eyes darkened, but she nodded, her expression unreadable. With a final bow of respect, they turned away, leaving the ancient sanctum behind. Their steps were silent, the weight of the Guardian's words settling over them like a shroud. As they trekked through the dense woods, Azural felt an unease growing within her, a quiet dread that pulsed in time with the map she carried. Hours passed, and the forest around them grew wilder, the trees twisting and bending, their branches heavy with darkened moss that dripped like blood in the dawn light. The ground shifted beneath their feet, a subtle reminder of the enchanted nature of these woods. Soraya led the way, her gaze steady, her hand tracing the symbols carved into her staff, as though grounding herself against the unnatural presence of the forest. "We're close," she murmured. "I can feel it." Talvar, ever alert, walked beside her, his hand resting on his sword hilt. He glanced back at Azural, his gaze laced with concern. "You're certain this is the right path?" Azural nodded, though the doubt lingered within her. "If the Guardians are right, then we have no choice. Eldara's forges may be our only hope of fully severing Malakar's influence." As they spoke, the ground beneath them rumbled, and a dense fog began to rise, swirling around their feet, thickening until it became almost impossible to see. Shadows shifted within the mist, figures half-formed, flickering just out of sight. Azural felt a chill creep up her spine, her instincts on high alert. "We're not alone," she whispered, her hand instinctively igniting with a faint blue flame. Talvar and Soraya moved to her sides, their expressions tense, weapons at the ready. Suddenly a figure emerged from the mist, cloaked and hooded, his presence cold and oppressive. His voice echoed, a mocking tone laced with malice. "Draconis Ignis Aeterni, I knew you would come." Azural's heart clenched as she recognized the figure. Vuva, his form flickering like smoke, his eyes 2 points of fiery light. She stepped forward, her flames blazing brighter, casting a fierce glow against the darkness. "Your hold over me is broken, Vuva," she said, her voice steady. "Whatever bond you believe remains, I am free." Vuva chuckled, his expression twisted in mockery. "Free? Do you not see, Azural? You cannot sever the past. The power within you, the fire you wield, was born of shadow. It will always be bound to me." Azural's anger flared, her fire roaring to life, casting blue flames against the mist. "This fire is mine. It will never be yours," she declared, her voice ringing with defiance. Vuva's smile vanished, his form shifting, growing larger, darker, until he loomed over her, a figure of pure shadow and malice. "Then prove it," he hissed, his voice echoing through the clearing. With a flick of his hand, the shadows condensed, forming into monstrous shapes, creatures with gleaming eyes and teeth bared, advancing toward them. Talvar moved beside her, his sword raised, his stance resolute as he met the oncoming shadows, his strikes swift and unrelenting. Soraya was beside him, her hands weaving a barrier of light that deflected the creatures as they lunged. The three fought in unison, their combined strength holding the darkness at bay. Azural called on her fire, letting it surge through her, her flames cutting through the shadows, scattering their forms into wisps of smoke. Viova's presence pressed against her, his power fueling the creatures, but she stood firm, her spirit unyielding. The creatures recoiled, their forms twisting in agony beneath the heat of her flames, but Viova's dark gaze remained fixed on her, his power undiminished. Then from the edge of the clearing another figure appeared, a woman, her face hidden beneath a hood, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Soraya's expression darkened as she recognized her. "The Ashen Order," she whispered, her voice filled with disdain. Azural narrowed her gaze, her fire intensifying as the woman stepped forward, her voice smooth and commanding. "You cannot escape us, Draconis Ignis Aeterni. Surrender now, and we may spare those who stand beside you." Azural felt a surge of anger rise within her, her flames blazing brighter as she took a step forward. "Tell Viova that I am no one's to claim," she replied, her voice steady. "If he wants to face me, he can come himself." The woman laughed, a cold, mocking sound. "Viova's reach is everywhere, even where he does not walk. You cannot escape his shadow." As she spoke, she signaled to her companions, and the shadows surged forward, their forms shifting into monstrous shapes that closed in around them, fangs bared and claws extended. Talvar raised his sword, positioning himself protectively beside Azural, his gaze unwavering. "We fight together," he said, his voice a quiet, steady force. Soraya joined them, her magic flaring, weaving a shield of light that bolstered Azural's flames, creating a barrier of fire and light against the advancing shadows. The three of them stood firm, their strength combined, their resolve unbreakable. They could feel the darkness pressing in, Viova's power lingering in the air like a cold, malevolent presence, but they did not falter. With a final surge of power, Azural let her fire roar to life, blazing bright and fierce, pushing back the shadows, scattering the creatures into wisps of smoke. Viova's form flickered, his eyes narrowing as he watched his minions fall back, his expression twisted in fury. "This isn't over," he hissed, his voice a cold promise. "You may think you are free, Azural, but you will never escape the darkness that binds you." With that, he vanished, his form dissolving into smoke, leaving only the faint echo of his voice in the silence. Azural felt the weight of his words linger, the chill of his presence clinging to her, but her heart remained steady, her resolve unbroken. She looked to Talvar and Soraya, their faces filled with quiet determination, the bond between them stronger than ever. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, but the path ahead remained treacherous, and Viova's threat lingered in the air like a shadow, a promise of the battles yet to come. But as they continued on their journey, Azural knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, their fire and light a force strong enough to stand against even the darkest shadows.